Beautiful people. Welcome to the I was gonna the sexy blonde show here in BooB Camp,
The sexy blondes.
right? Even when we're under the pump and we're not well, we turn up.
That's
Okay.
exactly right.
Yes. So we're just waiting for some people to join here. So we are live in BooB Camp. Everyone in BooB Camp, Loz's face should be familiar to you. She is answering your questions. We've done lives in here before, and she's always available for you to reach out. But never have we spoken about this topic at such a personal level because, Loz, you are I woke up thinking of you this morning,
As you do.
as I do. And it's like I applaud you for like there's probably nothing that you haven't done for your health. Um,
Mm,
you've done all of the things and to try to find out answers to what is going on and how can I make myself feel better. I want to
mm.
feel better because I know like you know so much. Your brain is just I just can't fathom how much like you hold in that little head of yours. And but to be personally going through all the struggles and now to find out, now to be diagnosed with lipedema.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a lot. But that's on top of the other things. So which I believe goes part and parcel in a lot of the other inflammatory conditions that, we experience as women.
So what last week we had our part one where we had the beautiful Sarah and Nikki talk about their stories and how they've ended up at stage three, like stage two, stage three, stage four. Nikki spoke about her operations. So your stage, like I've had your beautiful body in my hands quite a bit. And you are a personal trainer, you are active, you are lifting weights, you are so pedantic with your food because of the gut issues and all of the things. And now it's like, okay, 1 in 9 women have lipedema. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be, you don't have to turn up with oversized clothes on and be a size 20 to have lipedema.
Yeah, and I think lipedema has lots of different shapes, sizes, and forms, right? So mine is stage one. It is mild compared to, I think, what a lot of other women experience. In saying that, though, because I have been so proactive in managing my health in so many ways, when I actually got diagnosed, it was interesting because I had two people diagnose me in the space of 3 weeks. One was a vascular doctor who did some vein work on me, and I actually asked him. I said, "What do you think about this as a as a as a diagnosis?" And he said straight away, "I definitely think this is what you've got," and this would explain a lot of things. He wanted to basically jump into surgery, which I wasn't very happy about. And then I went and got a second opinion from a lipedema specialized occupational therapist who's been doing this for over 15 years. And she said in her, 15-year history of looking after women specifically who have lipedema and other types of disorders of the lymphatic system and metabolic disorders. She said she's had two people who she feels for because she sees how much work we put in. And the reason that mine is probably so well managed is because of the way that I eat and my approach to healthy eating and the way that I exercise, which is obviously what I do for a living. I am the Mojo Mentor and I help people eat, breathe, sleep, move, hydrate more effectively so they don't burn out and they get more consistency. And in my own life, it certainly helped a lot. It doesn't make it great. It doesn't mean the pain's not there. It doesn't mean that every day is amazing, despite what people sometimes see on social media. It means that there are management strategies and protocols that I must put in place on a daily basis to help mitigate the way that this condition impacts my life.
Perfect. Perfect. So we're going to spend the next half an hour mainly talking about food.
Yeah.
Okay. Mainly talking about inflammatory, the metabolic issues, what is the best to the best times, the amounts, and all the different things. So if you do have lipedema or you suspect you may have lipedema, please listen into these parts about the things that we're putting into our body.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Very important.
All right, Loz. So do you want to start with like what a day should look like? And like when you have lipedema, like this is pretty much a non-negotiable if you don't want it to get to the next stage.
Yeah. I think in regards to some talking points for today's chat, I think I'd like to maybe start with why food is really a handbrake for lipedema rather than going straight into like what a day looks
Great.
like, is to understand that, you know, certain foods they do quietly drive inflammation and lipedema affected tissue. And so we want to understand that really small and consistent swaps, they release, I call them handbrake habits, right? So you're eating, breathing, sleep, movement, and hydration. But eating is a huge one. It's probably the biggest one that we need to speak about when it comes to lipedema, because it's understanding that really small, and it seems very insignificant at the time, but very small but consistent swaps of food and the things that you're choosing to consume, they can help you sort of take the handbrake off without overhauling your whole life. And I think the big thing here, Chelsey, to understand is that when you are faced with a diagnosis, especially for the first time, when you're having that conversation, you feel really seen and heard, number one, because you're like, this shit that I'm managing is not in my head. This is a thing. This is a thing, and I can do something about it. So the flip side to that coin is that when you have a diagnosis, it is very challenging, but also the flip side is that now you understand what it is and the framing that we can put around that to help them manage the thing, right? Mm-hmm. But what people tend to do is they go all or nothing, and they spend a heap of money, they spend a heap of time, and they can easily be led down a path that may be not the best path for them based on the assumptions that people make who are diagnosing them, who may have a vested interest in wanting to do things with that person, if that makes sense. So especially when we're talking about surgery. So what I thought would be useful to talk about is just some of the daily things that you can do. I mean, you're already eating. So understanding that lipedema, it is chronic. Okay. It is a chronic and it is a progressive condition. Okay. So let's not pretend that it's not, but obviously if you have this, you'll know what it feels like, but it's basically where abnormal fat tissue, it starts to accumulate, and it's very closely tied to the lymphatic and inflammatory systems. Right. But food, we've got to understand, like, food itself does not cause lipedema. Okay. It does not cause lipedema, but it definitely influences how inflamed and symptomatic the body feels day to day. So what you eat has a very large impact on what your symptoms look like. And the biggest inflammatory drivers that most people overlook, great. Thanks,
Hey,
Mick.
Mick.
Hey, Mick. Chelsey says hi. Thanks. It didn't.
I'm glad he had clothes on.
Yeah, you're very lucky he had clothes on. Or unlucky. That costs extra. But the biggest inflammatory drivers that most people overlook are things like ultra processed food and lots of refined sugar. I guess refined sugar in excess, things that you've spoken about like seed oils in processed food products, alcohol. But then also, more importantly, I want to sort of bring up, as a nutrition coach, I find that it's chronic undereating. Chronic undereating actually will spike cortisol and worsen inflammation. And so what ends up happening is women, they get diagnosed with these things. They're like, oh, I've got to go on a special diet. And then they undereat. They actually stop eating. And then their body thinks that they're in like a famine. And then it starts doing weird stuff. Mick, here's your thing. So you don't have to walk behind me with clothes on. So I think that understanding that we do need to make sure that we are eating enough of the right types of foods, which I'll talk about shortly. But it is actually something that can drive inflammation generally. And as somebody that's dealing with women over 40, I see this every single day when I'm dealing with clients. Women think they're doing the right thing, right? They're like, I'm really focusing on what I'm eating, but they've got their information somewhere off Instagram or some AI generated content. And it's really easy to sort of get swept up in the hype of different diets with different labels and all of those things. But I really think that following a framework for eating rather than a diet with a label is probably the best thing you can do for yourself, because you're a person. You're not an app. You're not a spreadsheet. You are a person with feelings and a condition that is very specific to you, despite it being an inflammatory condition that you might be going through. I think realizing that It's not a one size fits all. So having a flexible structure that's built around what your body actually needs to help reduce that inflammation is really important. And this is about, stabilizing blood sugar, having adequate protein, and then eating food that's consistent rather than perfect. And there's this fixation on, oh my God, I have to be perfect. I've got to do all this stuff. And then you end up binging. It's less about that. It's more about mainly doing the things that are the best for you, and then having some flexibility. It's about understanding what practical swaps can look like. So instead of cutting everything at once, it's starting with an anchor. And I like to use protein with every meal for myself and my clients, and then to watch how cravings and energy and then that heaviness shifts. And that'll happen very, very quickly as soon as you develop an awareness.
So the lead up to this, Loz, remember the lead up can be 12 months, can be 2 years, can be 20 years of a woman going to the doctor. I'm putting on weight. I'm sore. It's sore to touch. I'm putting on weight. I'm getting heavier. I can't move. I'm inflamed. And the doctor's saying, you're eating too much. You're eating too much. You're eating too much. So it's cut, cut, cut.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? And the system, it's not really designed to support you. It's just giving you information and throwing it at you. And then you are the one left trying to hold all the balls, juggling in the air and going like, which ball do I let drop? I don't understand. And then you'll try anything, right? Because in desperate times when we are suffering and we're in pain and things aren't right, and then we finally get some clarity on this is the thing you've got. As I said, it's very easy to go down sometimes those paths that aren't best for you. So I think maybe the second part to sort of go into, which is what we're going to start with, is trying to understand how to actually build a plate that supports the lymphatic system. I think that's really important. I think, first of all, recognizing that it's not a one size fits all. Everybody's different, no matter what stage you're at. But understanding that a lipedema plate, it's actually not that complicated. If we're thinking about something that's like lipedema-friendly, we want to build food systems for ourselves that support lymphatic health and also really hormonal stability, because hormonal stability and then also gut function, they're the biggest things that I find happen with me constantly, because my body's in such this chronic state of inflammation on a daily basis. It makes it very challenging to then, try and go out and be social and all of those things sometimes, because, you've got to have consideration of your body, but nothing tastes as good as healthy feels.
Yes.
And once you start feeling healthy, everything is easier. So I think first and foremost, protein first is the big one. And I'm not talking about getting obsessed with protein. I don't know about you, but I'm seeing every stupid thing now everyone's talking about protein. They've literally greenwashed the crap out of it. Like protein Milo cereal. I'm like, hey, why is there Milo cereal? Number one, like why does that even exist? Number two, why did you need to put protein? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we've got this obsession with protein, but I also think that we've got to understand, like, protein is probably the most underrated lever for managing lipedema symptoms. And this is a big thing for me. And what I learned, I was severely under eating protein. I think I was so tired all the time that I was like, okay, I've got to go for this quick fix. And I was basically living on lots of starchy carbohydrates to try and fix my energy problem, which in fact was making it worse. Right. And a lot of women with lipedema have other types of metabolic disorders. They have insulin sensitivity problems. They have reproductive system issues. Any endocrine system disruption is then magnified because now they're fatigued and, you're trying to basically just cycle through all of these things. So I think understanding the role of protein is important, because protein's job is that it supports muscle tissue, and muscle tissue protects lymphatic vessels. Right. Got to understand that. It also stabilizes blood sugar. That's what protein does. It also reduces cravings and really helps with like managing fluid. Right. So understanding that protein is very, very important, and that protein actually is what we call a metabolically expensive macronutrient. And so when we think about macronutrients, if you're not sure what that, everyone's talking about macros, it's like carbs, fats, proteins, right? So
yeah, there are 3 food groups. They are not 5.
Yeah.
Fat, protein, carbohydrate. Fruit and vegetable is not a food group.
It's a carb.
Bread and cereal
right.
is not a food group.
Yeah, and
So
people don't understand, and this is where I mean there's that confusion and that overwhelm, right? But then we've also got to consider we have macronutrients, which macro means big, which are your carbs, fats, proteins, but we also have micronutrients, which are things like, you know, vitamins, minerals, all of those sorts of things. And when we talk about macronutrients, it's important to understand, as you just said, like carbohydrates are what most people eat a lot of. They do have the most calories per gram. But what I mean by being metabolically expensive is that protein, your body has to burn more fat and use more energy to break it down. And you'll know what this feels like when you go and eat a steak, like a heavy piece of animal protein, like you feel heavy, like your body, it fatigues, you get tired, like people get meat sweats. And my brother does. It's really gross, but because your body has to actually burn a lot of energy to try and break that protein down. And so when we increase disproportionately the amount of protein in our diet over the other macronutrients, you'll find that your body then has to use a lot more energy. And so it actually becomes more metabolically efficient. It actually gets better at using food and energy, right? So it's an interesting swap, because when we start to remove some of those starchy carbohydrates that aren't so useful and nutritionally dense as, you know, things like vegetables, then you have more space for things like protein. So understanding the role of that. But then the other part of that conversation is that we need to then increase our fiber, because the problem with protein is because it takes a while to break down and it takes a lot of energy to break down. We need fiber to help with our gut motility, to help push that protein out. Otherwise, you get really constipated. And if you do have a sluggish immune system and a sluggish metabolism, you probably are a bit more prone to constipation than the average person. And so understanding, like, you know, the good gut stuff, you know, eating your plants, you know, really, really important. And we want to eat plants in a form our gut can handle. And so this is the other part of the conversation, right? If you're already in a chronic stress state of inflammation, probably your gut isn't going to handle things like somebody else. And I know for me, raw, really high fiber for everything isn't the goal, because when your body's inflamed, it actually can make it worse. So things like cooked vegetables, soups, and I actually follow a lower FODMAP diet, which is like, I'm not going to actually tell you what that stands for. It's like for frugosaccharides, oligosaccharides, disaccharides.
oh, she was smart.
It's just it goes on. But low FODMAP, which is actually something that you can go buy. You can buy low FODMAP food. It's approved by Monash University, who developed this low FODMAP protocol. They're really good, I find, and equally as valid as other things. And I actually find they're often better tolerated. So that takes out, you know, a lot of that inflammatory stuff. Things like onions and garlic can be highly inflammatory for people who already are in a chronic state of inflammation, and that takes them out of that sort of that FODMAP. So we also want to eat in an order that reduces blood glucose spikes. And the order that you eat your food in, it actually does matter, despite what evidence-based practitioners sort of tell you. As somebody who experiences this, who is an evidence-based practitioner, I will tell you that the order in which you eat your food will have a huge impact on your blood sugar. And you can experiment on yourself by wearing a continuous glucose monitor for a period of time and watching your trends as you eat different types of foods in different orders. But I find that...
Okay, so the order that I like to eat my food in, Loz, is the yuckiest stuff, or the least favorite stuff on the plate. And then I always have the yummiest part as the last bite.
Well, I guess
the order that we're talking about.
It kind of is. It kind of is. And I think that's contextual, right? Like, because I think most people don't like vegetables. Like, let's be honest. Like, most people, like, you wouldn't just go sit down and eat a bowl of vegetables, unless you're me, because I do that. But, you know, generally the yummiest parts are like the carbohydrates and the fats, right? And depending on which way you steer towards, whether you're a carb dominant preference or a fat dominant preference, that'll dictate what that last thing is. But I think that's a really good logical strategy. I guess when we're talking about, you know, a pragmatic strategy, I always say like vegetables first. So I would always eat my vegetables first, because that's creating fiber, which is then feeding the bacteria as a prebiotic. So it's helping the good bacteria then like go, wake up, wake up, wake up. I always like to have things like fermented vegetables with my meals as well, little ferment. So either something like apple cider vinegar, or I get like sauerkraut and only little bits because you can't really tolerate a lot, but a little tiny bit
or
rocket,
something like that, because it gets
something
the
peppery.
juices going in your belly.
Yeah. And
Yes.
so, and then through mastication, which I said mastication, which
Yes,
is the chewing,
tea.
that will then help generate enzymes. It will help to break down food a little bit more. And then what I would normally do is I would eat my protein and my protein and my fats in there. And then have the more starchy types of carbohydrates towards the end. So if I had a plate, let's say I had, meat and 3 veg for dinner, which is the typical average Australian meal. So I had some beef with I probably had some peas. What do people eat? Peas, corn,
potato, peas, and corn.
Yeah,
like
potato, peas, corn, carrots, right?
Yeah.
So then what I would be doing is I would be adding a little bit of a dressing to that, or having something before that. So I might have a little bit of ginger, or I might add a bit of like rocket or some radish or something, have that first, then have my vegetables. I probably would put a little bit of olive oil on my vegetables, a little bit of olive oil and salt just to taste. It tastes delicious. Eat that first, then have my meat, and then finish with the potatoes.
Yeah.
So that can help. That can definitely help really with that post-meal inflammatory process and stop those blood sugar swings. And it's just a really simple structural shift that actually has a really good payoff. It's also important, I think, to consider, Chelsey, that the hydration is absolutely non-negotiable. And I know you harp on about this a lot, but your lymphatic system, right? It doesn't have a pump. It has to be manually looked after, and also it needs fluid to move. So there's no point doing all of your glove work and your light bulb stuff and all of your stuff if you're not drinking enough water to help push all of that energy through. Like, you do need to be drinking enough good quality water, because you can't sugarcoat it, but dehydration, it makes lipedema really, really bad. And we've got to think that, water plus electrolytes, and you can get dehydrated in winter. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, it's pretty cold now. And not just having just water on its own, it does support proper fluid balance in tissues. And I'm talking like, you can do something as simple as put some Celtic sea salt in your water just to help remineralize your water. And then if you are prone to heavy sweating, if you're using some of the amazing tools that Chelsey has to help increase your body temperature on a regular basis, exactly. Any of those items where you're going to be increasing your sweat output, we do need to make sure we are rebalancing and rehydrating using electrolytes. It is important because you will lose a lot of that mineral and electrolytes through your sweat. And then if you just continue to drink only water on its own, you will further dilute the electrolytes in your system, and you can end up actually dehydrated, as somebody that used to end up like that, right? Used to sit in saunas for like an hour.
If you don't have the right salts and minerals, then you're not even going to sweat.
Yeah, exactly. If you're taking ages and ages and ages to sweat, then that's an indication that you do have an electrolyte imbalance. And then I think really, really, like, the final part of this bit is really that you got to understand consistency beats perfection every single time, right? Like, we got to remember, like, when we're talking about eating and our life and our real life, not some pretend life that people think that we have, we've got to eat in a way that's designed to fit that. And I always say, so I have a thing called the can I say swear words?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I have a thing called the Fuck-Free Flexi Food Framework, right? And something I've created based on years and years of practice, not only professionally and clinically and understanding what clients need, but also in my own personal experience. So I built a thing called the Fuck-Free Flexi Food Framework, right? Something like that. The way that it works is it's about the 80% consistency rule. So 80% consistency done across a week, it will do way more for your life and your lipedema and your symptoms and your overall general longevity and health than a perfect 3-day streak followed by chaos.
Yeah.
Right. So it's about 80%. So I always say with the framework, 80% consistency, at least 80% following your framework, which is to do with the order that you eat your food, the way you're prioritizing protein. And then, you've got this 20% buffer zone at the most, but 20% is normally more than adequate for most people to go to a birthday party and eat something that maybe you weren't going to eat, but then have the insight and the foresight to know that I'm probably not going to feel my best straight after this, and to be able to then program that into your week to go, I've got some recovery phases, or have some supplementation, or have some protocols that help back that up so that you are detoxifying, you are doing your best. So
drink some extra water. on those days before and after. Maybe take some digestive enzymes if you know
Yep.
you are going to have, you're going to go and have a party. Like, we want you to enjoy yourself. But just remember, when you go to the party, choose the protein
Yes.
foods,
Yep.
or fill yourself up with some protein before you go. And then you might not be reaching out into the wrong types of foods as well.
Agreed. And it's about being prepared, right? And like it, your lipedema, it's not going away on its own. Do you know what I mean? Like it's something like when you finally come to the realization, this is just something you have to manage. And it's like we're all carrying something. Yours just might be visible to, in a pair of shorts and in your legs. And, do you know what I mean? Like everyone's carrying something, but you get to choose how heavy it's going to be. And I'm not talking about like the physical weight. I'm talking about the energetic weight of that. And so being prepared is, I went to Brownie Guides, right? Was it? I don't remember. And that was our slogan, be prepared. And it is really the most important thing. Prepare to be enticed by the beef sliders that are going to get put in front of you at the social event that you're about to go to. And then prepare to eat in advance and always ask in advance if they do cater for dietaries. When I fly, I always fly and ask for weird dietary requirements. When I go on a cruise, I always tell them I've got dietary requirements, and people will look after you. It's 2026, unless you're watching this from 2027 in the past. But, more than likely, people will be able to cater for you. So don't be scared to ask. And I think really that then sort of goes us to this last point for today's chat, which is more about why restriction and guilt can actually make lipedema worse. Because I don't know about you, but I find that women specifically were like, no, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to be trouble. I don't want to cause trouble. And so then they don't speak up about things.
We spoke yesterday, last week, Loz, about the typical lipedema body or person is the one who looks after everybody else.
Right.
Is the empath, is the one who puts herself last and takes everything else on. So you can stereotype to and maybe an 80% of lipedema women of the mother hens.
Yeah, you're right. And then those particular types of archetypal female categories are then more prone to things like shame and restriction and that all or nothing cycle that they end up getting stuck in. And that's really not just emotionally exhausting. It's actually like physiologically worsening for our inflammatory stuff, right? So I think
we're going into that next week. So everyone who's watching this,
amazing.
We're talking about a lot of the emotional side next week too. Yeah.
And that's going to be great. I think definitely hang around for that, guys, because a sustainable shame-free approach is it's not actually a soft option. It is the only smart option that you should be taking. So when we're thinking about that, I think understanding that chronic stress that can come from things like restriction or food guilt and body shame, it does raise your cortisol. And we know that cortisol is an important hormone that our body does produce. It has a very specific purpose, but also we don't want to be raising that at times of the day when it's not necessary and chronically having raised cortisol, because we know that that's going to just drive this ongoing inflammatory process in our body. And it then will worsen your fluid retention, and then it will make your lipedema symptoms far louder, right? So, it's important to understand there is a physiological and psychological component that is fully integrated in any sort of ongoing chronic medical condition. We know that lipedema is a chronic condition, even though they don't really know a lot about it. They're getting better, but we've also got to understand, and this is what's happened to me, is that the lipedema fat, it doesn't respond to calorie restriction the way that normal fat does, right? I know for me personally, like I train really, really well. I rest really, really well. I get all of my sleep. I eat an incredibly clean diet, and I still have lipedema between my knees and my belly button. I got it on the back of my arms. It freaking hurts to get a massage. I'm constantly bruised. I literally just wake up with bruises all the time. Pisses me off because I'm like, I used to be really fit and have I should be really lean and really muscular. I can't even put on muscle anymore. I'm losing muscle even though I can lift an insane amount of weight, doing Pilates and yoga and teaching 9 classes a week and being really active and performing on weekends. It doesn't react like my clients, right? So I think the thing is, even being on a low calorie diet or, anything like that, it just can make it worse. So understanding that that is just how it is. I think that when we try and restrict aggressively, we then end up losing muscle, which we need metabolically and for healthy aging. And then also, not to mention our bone density, which then is enhanced with more lean muscle. And then what happens is when we do all of these things and we feel really shit, we're not getting better, we're getting worse. Right.
Okay, so when somebody is diagnosed or looking for different foods, they're going to get thrown a lot of words. So it's that, okay, let's do keto. Oh, let's do 5-2. Oh,
Yeah.
let's do plant-based. Oh, no, you can only do carnivore. There is going to be so many different categories. Now, that's going to be determined, as you said, on your lifestyle, your blood type, the foods and everything that you can tolerate. But like you've said before, what we need to prioritize is your protein, your fats, and your carbohydrates. And I think the most researched way to eat, the last time I looked into it, was to have 5-hour gaps. But so no snacking in between. So you eat, you give your body time to your liver and your bowels, like you get your body time to work, and then you eat again, and then the same thing. So I don't know if any of your research, Loz, has.
No.
What do you say?
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that 5-hour timing because I think that's a highly contextual, fragmented conversation. If you are somebody that expends a lot of energy, not just through physical activity, but through thought process, we've got to remember the majority of our total daily energy requirements for our day are actually consumed by just keeping us alive. That's called our BMR, or basal metabolic rate. And depending on how much physical activity you add on top of that will indicate how many calories you need in a day. And so majority of that is used to just keep you alive, run your brain, run your breathing organs, run your digestive system and all the other systems. And so the problem is if you then add physical activity on top of that, school pickups, training, you are going to end up potentially in a hypoglycemic episode by hour 3 of that 5-hour window. And once again, this is coming back to you shouldn't be following something that has strict rules or a title. What works for most of the people that I work with is one, removing that moral layer from eating and using food as information, fuel, and a foundation. And it's not a test of willpower or worthiness, but it's almost integrating bits and pieces from all those. So with the Fuck-Free Flexi framework, the way that I've sort of staged that out personally is it's very educational, and there's 6 phases. And the first phase is more about teaching people what the freaking hell food even is, how macronutrients work, how calories can be useful, but not in a way that becomes all dictating. Calories are an understanding of energy exchange, but we then take people into a short window of keto, just so that by nature, they are prioritizing healthy fats, which we need for our lymphatic system, right? Which you've spoken about, healthy fats. And, making sure we're getting the good ratios of omega-3s and omega-6s, which I know you're very passionate about, but also making sure that we are getting that protein. And so by going on a keto phase of some sort, it's a modified keto phase, it means that we are prioritizing those macronutrient structures over things like empty carbohydrates that aren't really fueling us. But then very soon after that, it's about educating on you to test what's going to work for your body. And rather than giving you strict frameworks like, you must fast for 5 days, fast for 2 days and then eat, do you know what I mean? Like it's about finding what works for you. And then we take people through 6 phases over a period of time, and then they can learn to work out what phase they need right now for their life, and they can go back into that. And so the idea is that you want to try a few different things, see what works for you. And sure, like I've tried my fair share of different diets, right? And I think fasting can be useful if you're doing all of the other things right. I think meal timing is useful if you're hitting your protein target for the day. And we know, evidence-based practice, that as we get older, our protein needs increase every year over the age of 50 by about 1%. We know that every year over the age of 30, women are losing 2 to 4% of their bone density, through menopause 4 to 6%. And after 7 years post-menopause, they can lose up to 30% of their bone density. We know that. And so we also know that as we age, our calorie needs reduce, but disproportionately our protein needs increase. And so then to support higher protein disproportionately, we then need to increase fiber. So there's all these different things. And this is not me giving you a diet. This is me just explaining biology, chemistry, and just the simple anatomy of your body. So I think,
wouldn't it be better? Sorry,
mm,
wouldn't it be better? So many women will go, okay, I've just been given a diet. I'm just going to follow this. Here's my recipes.
yeah,
Here's my shopping list. I'm going to do this, this, and this, and then they stop.
yep,
And then what happens?
yeah,
Everything
exactly.
reverts because there's no education that goes with it to say why this is going to work for me
Yeah,
or why this isn't going to work for me. And so doing your approach, and like you don't have to do a 4-year degree
nah,
like we've done, but you can easily learn this, like you said, in this 6 weeks. And ladies, if you are interested, like I honestly think this is the best thing that you can do, not only for yourself, but for your family as well, to learn about, oh, okay, this is what a protein does. Or if I'm feeling this way, or maybe then I need to add in, it's like, what are the fats that I need for my brain? And
yes.
and yes,
And
so
you shouldn't be cooking 7 freaking different meals for everybody in your household. You know what I mean? Like the whole point of using a framework as a system is that, if you have some favorite recipes, and look, I have recipe books for people. I have plenty of recipes that people can follow, only because some people, especially women, they're like, I don't want to have to think. But also, we want to teach you to fish as we give you fish, if that makes sense. So we're not just going to give you fish. I personally, as a nutrition coach, I very seldom write meal plans for people. I hate meal plans. I think meal plans are highly restrictive. I personally developed an eating disorder after being on a meal plan for a really long period of time. I developed a disorder called orthorexia because I didn't know how to integrate back into real life, and I was obsessed with eating clean. And it was literally just control and grief wrapped up in clean eating as a disguise. And so it's very easy for women specifically to slip into that because they're busy and they're tired and they don't want to have to think about things all of the time. It's like Steve Jobs wearing the same thing over and over and over again. We don't want decision fatigue. But also, if we do have families, and we are preparing food for multiple people in a household, wouldn't it just be easy to just cook exactly the same thing for everybody and then just change the proportions of the different parts of your meal? So I always suggest keeping your starchy carbohydrates as a separate thing, as like a side, rather than having your vegetables and a salad as a side. You would then have your starchy carbs as a side, and you would understand how to then cycle different types of carbohydrates, whether it's a low carb food, moderate, high, or the highest type of carb foods in with your diet so that you are getting a very wholesome, nutritious intake of food that's going to support you and your family. And also realize that you're not broken and you're not failing, but you just have a body that needs the right foundations. And it's not a stricter diet or more discipline. It's simply protein first, add your fiber, eat consistently, reduce inflammatory inputs without restriction, and build a relationship with food that's sustainable and not suffocating. That's really it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so lipedema ladies, like we're talking directly to you, but just because like everybody else in your family can eat the same. This is just healthy eating. This is just lower we're using foods that's not inflammatory. We're using foods so do your shopping in the green grocery area and then go around to the meats. If you're in a normal supermarket, you go around the outside and then you come out the other side. You don't need to go down the aisles as much and just get all the packet type of food. So, if you don't enjoy cooking, you're going to have to suck it up. Like this is just something that you're going to have to do. You can do it simpler. You can get the salad bags already done, and so you can just open them up, whack it onto your plate. You can get a bit of meat, whack it on the, whack it, whack it, whack it.
Whack it.
Cook your meat. If you're vegetarian, I don't understand why. But you can get your protein in all other ways. So so let's talk through where we can get proteins from, Loz.
Oh, there's so many sources of protein when we think about it, but predominantly animal-based protein is a really great source of protein if you are wanting to and able to eat animal-based proteins. They are what we call a whole protein. So they're complete protein, and they have amino acids in them. But there are other forms of protein, and you've got things like tofu, you've got plant-based protein. Things like nuts have protein in them. Things like baked beans and legumes have protein. Pulses have protein. Milk and dairy has protein. there's a very large source of protein available to you. But as you suggested, you want to kind of shop around the periphery of the supermarket and try not go to the cereal section where they've then fortified things with vitamins, minerals, and protein, because it's really unnecessary. At the end of the day, if you want to eat a little piece of chocolate, you're not eating it for protein. Do you know what I mean? Like, what are you eating the thing for? And I think understanding that and recognizing that food is really important to enjoy, it then helps us to make more sound decisions and look past the marketing of things and the greenwashing and the health halo of like, this has got all these things. And I'm like, I just want a piece of chocolate.
Most people who are looking for a piece of chocolate are magnesium deficient.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is the thing, right? Like understanding like, what is it that I'm wanting to eat this thing for? What's the benefit? But understanding your protein is very, very important. Understanding how much protein is in something. 100 grams of chicken is not 100 grams of protein, right? About 100 grams of chicken has about 30 grams of protein, depending on the part of the chicken that we're eating from, whether it's the breast, whether it's the leg. So the leaner the meat, probably the higher the protein, as opposed to having the fat content in there as well. But in the framework that I teach, there's a guide for every stage, and there is literally visuals of all of the foods that tells you exactly how much protein is in that amount. So it'll tell you like 100 grams of white meat equals this much protein. And so over the day, when I teach you how to educate you on how to create a protein profile for yourself, this is how much protein I need to basically hit based on my height, my weight, my age, and the amount of body fat that I have on me, approximately. This is how much protein I should be aiming for as a baseline. Once you hit that protein, it actually doesn't matter as long as you stay within the calorie window that, you know, you're not going to eat like 5,000 calories in a day. As long as you stay within a window of calories that make sense for your body, so you're not overeating or undereating, however you split your carbs and fats actually doesn't matter. We know that. People typically split things 60-40. So they might go like 40% carbs, 60% fats, or the reverse if you prefer carbs over fats. But that's really the general rule of thumb when it comes to getting enough protein. We go, this is sort of how many calories my body kind of needs for a day based on my physical activity and where I am. Majority of women aren't even hitting that. Majority of women are under eating and they're not even hitting their BMR. No wonder their body's like, oh my God, I'm so inflamed. But when we can get ourselves up to that calorie window, it's not an exact amount. It's, you know, it's a window, it's a range. Then as long as we hit our protein within that calorie window, that is the most important part. And normally when I'm talking people through this process, that's all I give a shit about. First of all, it's just getting their protein in. We don't even talk about calories because I know they're under eating anyway. And just by adding more protein into the diet, they'll accidentally eat more.
Yep.
And then women go to me, I can't believe how much I was under eating. Like, I can't believe how much I have to eat now. And I'm like, I'm feeling better. My fatigue's going down. My pain's decreased. I've lost some body fat. My brain fog's lifted. My clothes fit differently. My skin's better. I'm like, dude, you were starving yourself. You were starving yourself. And it's funny because your metabolism eventually catches up. Your digestive system catches up. And then you want to eat more, but then you'll want to eat more of the right types of things. And then you'll get more in tune with your body. You'll start to recognize, oh my gosh, I am craving chocolate. Oh, maybe it's because I'm in the part of my menstrual cycle, if you are still menstruating, when I probably need more magnesium to support my body, you know, and it's then you're fine tuning it. And this is where things like fasting protocols can be useful, food timing, but there's no point. You can't fast your way to slim or healthy if you're not even hitting the basics first. To me, it's a bonus.
Yes. So let's start with the basics, ladies. Have a look at your proteins, and if you need to add in some digestive enzymes as well. So that's most people do because their stomach acid is very low. But add in the rocket, add in those prebiotic foods, the kimchis and the fermented, the sauerkrauts and those types of things. Add those in first, and then like Loz said, have your greens and then your proteins. So, and we need to cut out things like our processed, the breads, cereals, those are things we need to cut out. So, Loz, I know that you've got a hair appointment. I've got a Bowen appointment that we need to get to at 12 o'clock, but everyone in BooB Camp can still put their comments. We do have some comments in here asking, is this going to be available on YouTube? Sure, we can definitely put this onto YouTube. You will find with Loz and I, we are both so dedicated in just sharing information and education so you can make better choices. And
100%.
we're happy to give, like, all of this, all of our knowledge, we're happy to share. And then if you want to reach out, I don't see any patients, I don't see any clients one-on-one anymore, but I have got the most amazing practitioners, and Loz is definitely, she knows, she's done my course before, but she's also very, very well educated in looking after you, whether it's for training or whether it's for diet or whether it's just, it's all of the things.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
all of the
so
things because
it's all of the
everything's
things.
important. Your eating, your breathing, your sleep, your movement, and hydration are all equally important. But it's about picking the lowest hanging fruit, which is the one that's going to be the easiest thing for you to make the smallest change to, and just stacking those changes over time. This is not about a 12-week challenge or hitting something really quick to get a fast result. This is a lifelong commitment to changing your life, and it's how it starts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. All right. So thank you so much, Loz. I know that you'll still see comments that are happening in BooB Camp, that you're in there and you're all over the place as well. So with your lipedema, is there anything that you have changed since finding out, since your diagnosis? So you were doing everything like really well. Is there
Yeah.
anything that you, a couple of things, anything that you have changed that you've noticed have made a difference?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is actually doing less of things, if that makes sense. So I think because I didn't realize that that's what I was dealing with, and I was really frustrated, especially as a personal trainer whose like body wasn't looking the way that I felt that it should be looking based on the inputs I was giving it. I've actually taken that burden mentally off my case, and then given that energy to other things that are more important. And so I actually spend more time not training than I was before. You know, it means that when I train, I do different types of training now. I'm not really fixated on a particular style. The moment I'm doing something called plyometric training, I perform in a band as a professional entertainer on the weekends, just in case you Chelsey
And
has
I
seen
go and watch.
she comes and watches. But I jump around like an absolute lunatic on stage. So I actually now train for that, like Beyonce. So like, because I have to sing and dance, I do about 13 kilometers on stage in a 3-hour show of just step touching and talking and crowd work. So I now train for that rather than lifting, structurally very heavy things. But I also have diversified what I do now. So I can do things like headstands and handstands and, hang off bars and be really flexible and do the splits. But then I can lift 120 kilos in a deadlift. Do you know what I mean? And so for me, that recognition of being seen and heard was probably the biggest thing in helping me let go of having to be so programmed in how I was training. When it comes to eating as well, I'm just continuing to eat the way that I was. I'm going to be following a more strict protocol. I've just found out I have toxic mold poisoning. This is the first you've heard of this. I found out 2 days ago. And a lot of my symptoms I actually believe now are being driven by the exposure to mold, which I think is happening in my workplace. So I'm now going on a whole process, but that's a whole separate thing to my lipedema. I think it's driving inflammation at a very systemic level in my body because of the mold exposure, which is why I think I'm sick all the time. But, that's for me to understand and unpack. So I'm going to be a little bit more tight only for the purposes of just trying something for a short period. But don't be scared to try things, guys. The biggest thing is that you don't want to be put in a box. Okay. You're a real human being. You're not AI. You are not, you are a biological miracle, and you should appreciate your body and the signals that it's giving you. And so if your body starts screaming at you, listen, educate yourself, surround yourself with a supportive group of people who are educated. Just because someone's been through something, I mean, I think it's important to recognize that lived experience is important, but try and find people who actually know what they're talking about, not only through lived experience, but with credentials to some degree, who actually are trained to help you. Also, don't just go to trained people either, because sometimes they're going to put you in a little tight box and try and treat you with a drug. So be educated,
Yes.
be open-minded, and first of all, just love yourself.
Yes. So just wanted to be loud and clear that some of the associations around lipedema, lymphedema, lymphatic health are working on very old protocols,
Absolutely.
and we will look at things differently. So I need to wrap things up there for both of us, Loz.
Yes.
Amanda has said, thank you. This was brilliant. Filled in some gaps in my lifestyle in my lifestyle changes, maybe choices. I'm glad I found this group. And Michelle's here from Minnesota again. Mwah.
Hi, Michelle.
Hello, Michelle. So yeah, so lots of people watching live. Please comment below, ask any questions because Loz and I are happy to come on and answer your questions. But please reach out if you have hit the point where you have had enough of trying on your own, you've had enough of the system, and you are ready to get proven results. This is the chick who will hold your hand and make sure that it happens. Okay, so please reach out to Loz.
And I'll put some links in the group, just linking to where you can do a free quiz. I've got a free 2-minute quiz. It'll help to tell you where you're most stuck. It's totally free. It takes 2 minutes. You can do it on the toilet. You can do it with one hand.
On the toilet.
You can do it with one hand while you dry brushing. You know what I mean? But I'll pop the link to that quiz because it's totally free and it'll point you in the direction of the habit that's probably holding you back the most.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good start. And it will give you a cheat sheet based on that. If it is food, it will tell you all of the quick little things that we've covered already today. And I've also got my lymphatic cheat sheet as well that I can share.
Yeah. So lots of thank yous coming through the page. Love this BooB Camp group. All right. Love you, Loz.
Love you too.
Okay. Bye.
All right, talk soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.